But do you think that is some level of confidence or cockiness is necessary for China now? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hear things left, right, and center that I get confused as well. Is the Chinese economy still strong, going strong, or is the Chinese economy hitting some sort of or going off some sort of a peak with the real estate market is down, the stock market is down, the consumer confidence is down. I mean, which way is it? I don't know. Like,
China has a very strong economy, and it's going to continue to be even stronger in the future. And the basic reason is that China is technologically dynamic, and it is already at the forefront of a large number of technologies that are the key technologies for the next 30 years. Electric vehicles, zero carbon energy systems, fourth generation nuclear, of course, battery supply chains, hydrogen economy, advanced shipping, 5.5G. These are the technologies that the world needs to make the energy transformation, to make the digital transformation. And China is very strong and very dynamic also in those technologies. And the manufacturing ecosystems, especially where we are in the Greater Bay Area, is absolutely extraordinary. I would say unique in the world. So, what's said in the media day to day, well, that's day to day news, but China, like any large economy, has ups and downs and quarters that are bad or quarters that are good, and the COVID was a disruption and so forth. But you have to look at the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are very, very strong. And that's very good, because not only is it good for China, it's good for the world. I do want to come back to this question about China's statecraft, and just to say, of course, we can theorize, but I would point to two historical facts that I think are positive and important. First, China hasn't been in any war for more than 40 years. This is extraordinary. The U.S. has been at war basically every day for the last 40 years, and usually in a number of places. China had a 1-month war with Vietnam in 1979, and since then. And that kind of long peace is, I think, the best evidence we have about China's statecraft right now. There's another historical piece of evidence that I think I personally believe in, though it's argued and debated among historians and scholars, and that is there was a long, long period of several hundred years, basically 500 years, of what has been called the Confucian peace in the region of China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, lasting really from the beginning of the Ming Dynasty until the British invasion of China in 1839 in the First Opium War. And so this long period almost had no war at all. Now, China was undoubtedly then, whether it's PPP or market prices, though the concept didn't exist of GDP, it was by far the dominant power. But China didn't invade Japan. China never in its history invaded Japan, except when the Mongols were briefly running things from in 1274 and 1281. Other than that, for 700 years, it was never an invasion from China to Japan. China never invaded Korea in its history, as far as I know. China invaded Vietnam, yes, 6 centuries ago, in 1410 or so. So this is a long, long peace. And I think that is part of China's statecraft. It is part of a Confucian order, if one could call it that. I believe that that's true. Some of my colleagues in the U.S. say, oh, no, that's not true. China has to be like every other country, which in their mind is war all the time, because in America it's war all the time. And why? Well, Europe has been basically at war for 1,000 years. And the fundamental difference is China unified and mainly stayed unified for 2,000 years, whereas Europe was fragmented, then it colonized other parts of the world, and they fought. Even Donald Trump in his inaugural address, he expressed the kind of 1950s happy vision of America, that we fought our way across the continent. It was a very bloody bunch of conquests by colonial power. We're not supposed to say that in Trump's America, but the truth is it was an expansionist imperial period. And that's a different history from China's history. So bottom line for me is there really could be a big difference of statecraft. China, cautious, friends or potential friends, and this makes a lot of sense. We had one sensible president during my lifetime, which was President Kennedy, who tried peace, and he had a very wonderful line. He said, across the gulfs and barriers that now divide us, we must remember there are no permanent enemies. Hostility today is a fact, but it is not a ruling law. And so he talked about the fact that don't think about enemies and friends, but when you get to Biden, it's all, you're our friend, you're our enemy. And that's the mentality that's so dangerous.
Interesting times. I know you're all pressed with time, but can I squeeze in another one about de-dollarization, Renminbi internationalization, BRICS currency, which Trump said anybody gets on board with de-dollarization, I'm going to tax the hell out of you. What's going to happen in the financial world now? And where does Hong Kong sit in between the international finance world and mainland? We said before, there are not necessarily always on par, if, for example, with the EFTs and the cryptocurrencies. So maybe lumping all that together into a sort of like a foresight into the financial world in the near future.
Who do you want?
Oh, it's completely up to you, gentlemen.
I'll start, but you guys are the experts of what's going to happen here. My own view is that China should internationalize the renminbi because relying overwhelmingly on U.S. dollar transactions is not sensible at this point. It's too risky. It is too much vulnerable to U.S. official intervention and meddling. Russia had $300 billion of reserves seized just by a stroke of the pen, and I can tell you the mentality in Washington and in London and in Brussels is we take what we want and we steal it as we want. And they really act in that way. If I were the BRICS countries, I would say that's fine and good what the U.S. wants to do, but there are many ways to settle an international transaction, and it doesn't have to be dollar-based through the SWIFT system. So my own prediction is that 10 years from now, we have a very different international settlement system in which the renminbi and perhaps some other currencies are playing a larger role.
But not crypto.
I don't think crypto is either. I don't see it having any value at all, and I see it having a negative value relative to central bank digital currencies, because a currency, yes, you could give a license to somebody to counterfeit money. Why do you give a license to someone to print money instead of the government? If you want monetary control, which I believe in, if you want a banking system that is stable with a central bank that stands behind it, why have crypto? Crypto is just an invitation, from my point of view, to trouble or arbitrary redistribution of wealth that makes no sense. And as someone who holds dollars, I don't love Bitcoin edging in and saying, well, we have $2 trillion of wealth. Well, where did you come from? Out of the blue. You didn't make anything. All you did was pump more CO2 into the atmosphere. You wasted a huge amount of computer time. You added nothing of value to the world real economy, nothing. So where did that wealth come from? Well, evidently it came from the rest of us. It added to inflationary pressures. It reduced monetary control. So I'm not a believer in crypto. I am a believer in digital currencies. That's quite different. That's a mechanism for payments. But then comes the role of the renminbi in particular. To my mind, China is the world's high saving country, and that saving is good for development all over the world. China should be investing in the rest of the world. And to invest in the rest of the world means an outflow of capital to build factories or to buy sovereign debt or to invest in foreign private bonds and so forth. And that means the renminbi denominated assets. That means Hong Kong being the center, I think, for finance for outflows from China. Outflow is not a bad thing. It means China buys up a lot of the productive assets in other places in the world, which is good for China and good for those places where China is investing. It's a win-win proposition. It's not a zero-sum proposition. So I would like to see China internationalize the renminbi. I'd like to see Hong Kong be not a dollar-based financial center, but a renminbi-based financial center to a large extent, and not just offshore renminbi, but an integrated financial system. And I believe because China is so efficient in low-carbon energy systems and other things that the world needs, that investing through Belt and Road and other initiatives is really a wonderful win-win activity for China and the world. I want to see more of it. I want to see Hong Kong as the great financial center that intermediates all of that. And I don't believe that can or should be done in dollars. I think it should be done in renminbi to a very large extent.